Chapter 22, Signaling that you are finished. It seems appropriate that we conclude our last class before our luncheon by covering how we signal to the waiter that we are finished with our meal. Now, Mrs. Melton Mowry paused, waiting for our attention. It is important to note that different countries have different approaches, so that you don't get confused. We'll confine ourselves to the American way. When you have finished eating, you simply put the handles of your fork and knife at the 4 o'clock position. The utensils lie across your plate with their tops near the 10 o'clock position. Oh, and the knife blade should be pointing in. Let's all try that, shall we? It didn't take long to master putting our knife and fork across our plate. Geez, some of this stuff was so dumb. After about 1,000,000 more reminders about what to wear, how to greet Mrs. Glennon, and everything else we'd already covered in exhausting detail, our last etiquette suspension class was over. Of course, I was itching to get outside. Where was my mother? Can you call Child Protective Services if your mother is continually late to pick you up? As I stood there with my nose pressed to the door, Miss Melton Mowry leaned over my shoulder and said in a quiet voice, "I asked your mother if she would delay her arrival so that you and I could talk." "You mean more than normal? What new form of torture could she have possibly dreamed up?" "I just want to go over a few things with you regarding the luncheon, Cassidy, in private." I froze. Did Miss Melton Mowry just call me by my first name? "Class is over. We don't have to use formal address." I double froze. It would have been an Oscar-winning performance in freeze tag. Miss Melton Mowry sighed. "Let's take a little walk, shall we? Get some fresh air and sunshine?" If you'd asked me, I would have said our teacher was allergic to fresh air. I was curious to see what she looked like in the sunshine. Could her skin get any whiter? As we stepped out the door, the wind blew a coupon for the juice bar right up into Miss Melton Mowry's face. She swiped it away, rearranged her shoulders into dining posture, and tugged at the bottom of her blazer to make it all straight. We walked past the tailor, the dry cleaner, and the dollar store. I would have peeked in to see what the candy selection was, but Miss Melton Mowry seemed like she was on a mission. "Watch out for gum at 12 o'clock, I said, pointing to a pink blob in the middle of the sidewalk. "Thank you." The wind blew harder. I had to grab my ponytail to keep it from whipping my face. Miss Melton Mowry's hair didn't seem to be affected. When it moved at all, it went in one big piece. I would swear it was a wig, but I'd seen her part with the strip of gray hair ladies get when they wait as long as they can before coloring it. "Tell me, Cassidy, do you think you'll live in Grand River forever?" First we were outside. Then she was asking me a personal question, the kind we never touched in polite conversation. I decided to roll with it. "Me? Nah, I'm going out on the open road. You know, sleep rough, gaze up at the stars." "There's not much use for etiquette around the campfire, is there?" "Not that I know of, but if there is, I'll have a heap of it." We came to the edge of the parking lot. The sidewalk kept going, and I could see that it connected to an apartment complex behind the strip mall. Between the two sat a deserted playground with just a swing set and a slide. There's something sad about empty playgrounds. "We can sit here." Miss Melton Mowry pointed to a bench across from the swing set. As we sat there in the hot sun, I wondered what was wrong with her plumbing that she wasn't sweating buckets. "Well," she began by folding her hands in her lap, "it's not just campfires where people have no use for etiquette, Cassidy. It seems the polite rules of society are no longer required in the days of reality TV and internet chat rooms. I have a favor to ask of you. The truth of the matter is, my enrollment is down. Parents think if their children watch my etiquette videos, they're covered. But practice is so important, and the nuances." She stopped talking and looked at me. In the bright light, I could see where her lipstick line went just a hair south of her lips. "I need this job, Cassidy. I am too old to be doing so much traveling. It's not the open road exactly, but the climate of the Middle East and the change in time zones. Working at the Private Reserve Academy would be a way for me to—" She broke off and examined her polished nails. "Well, in addition to being easier for us, it would be an honor, of course." "Us?" I knew I was in personal question territory, but if there was a Mr. Melton Mowry confined to a wheelchair due to war injuries who relied on his wife working just to get his pain medication, I wanted to know about it. Me and my cat, Mr. Jeeves, and misinformation, of course. "Oh, may I ask you another question, Miss Melton Mowry?" She nodded. "Very nice, Cassidy. Yes, you may." "Who's in that photograph in your office, the one you keep in your desk drawer?" Miss Melton Mowry shaded her eyes, then smiled. remembering. He was my beau, the one who had picnics with me by the water. Were you all stars and hearts for him, like in the cartoons? Stars and hearts and maybe even smiley faces. Then why isn't he with you now? It's complicated. Where there was that word again, the one grown-ups used when even they hadn't figured out the answer. We were in different stations in life. My parents didn't approve. It seems so silly now, but back then, I do wonder sometimes what would have happened if I hadn't been, well, such a dutiful child. More like you, perhaps, Cassidy. But my mother owned an etiquette school. We had visiting dignitaries all the time. I was her star pupil. I nodded. Things were beginning to make more sense around here. She loved to tell the story of the time we had lunch at the Polo Club. We were out on the terrace. They had just cleared the palate cleanser, I think it was a melon sorbet, when a spooked horse stampeded onto the patio, foaming at the mouth. Ladies screamed, men tripped over their chairs. I didn't know what to do, so I kept my eyes on my mother. You didn't run? Of course not. I hadn't been dismissed. It's important to stay calm in an emergency. Some of the diners were cut by the glassware, and Miss Melton Mowry stared into the distance, remembering I wasn't harmed. So is that what you wanted to have this little chat about? If there's a stampeding horse, then all eyes on you? Miss Melton Mowry looked as if she was about to say something else, but instead she reached over and patted my knee. Not in so many words, but I think, yes, that is the import. The following night, the night before the big luncheon, I did everything right. I turned off my e-reader an hour before bedtime. I dimmed the lights. I put on my cricket noises. I tried to read a very dull story about nucleo pepper something in one of Magda's Scientific American magazines. Nothing made me sleepy. I couldn't even scare up a yawn. So when I heard Dad in the hallway around 11, I called out to him. Cass, have I ever told you the human species is diurnal, not nocturnal? He asked, sticking his head into my room. I tossed the magazine on the floor. About 1,000,000 times. Flip over, he said, sitting on my bed and rubbing my back. Are you thinking about your big day? I nodded, my face in the pillow. Well, I can't see the future, but I do know one thing, Miss Cassidy. You're going to try your best. Of course I will, I said, lifting my head so Dad could hear. You don't think I'd like going to extra kit classes, do you? Because if you do, Dad, I know some scientists who'd want to examine your head. No, I don't think you do. It's just, well, I set a good intention, but then I don't know, something always goes wrong. Does something go wrong, or does something get stirred up? By someone who is, unengaged? Well, now that you mention it, it is deadly boring in there, and there's no AC. Can you die of hot boredom? I don't think so. My wish for you, Miss Cassidy, is that you learn how to be yourself and help others be themselves too. You're not the only one trying to get through the day. Today, for example, someone broke a jar of molasses in the baking aisle, and 6 carts rolled through it before my team was alerted. Do you know about the great molasses flood of 1919 in Boston? No, I had to admit I didn't. Well, picture a scaled-down grocery store version of a sticky federal disaster site. In the break room, they were calling it the Grand River Molassacre. That's rough. Sorry, Dad. Want me to rub your back? No, honey, it's all in a day's work. I calmed down by reminding myself that you would most likely have been one of the cart drivers. Be honest. Would you have been able to resist it? Why deny it? We both knew I'd be there, front and center, and sticky. Dad, I think I know how you feel. To cheer him up, I told him about Livy's letter and how frustrated it made me when I tried to read it. I wondered when this day would come, Dad said. I'm not trying to rub it in, sweetie, but it's called a dose of your own medicine. Well, it stinks, especially since I memorized the other one. I know, I'm sorry. You do know exactly how I feel. Grrr, growling like a bear meant bear hugs. I think I'm ready to go to bed now, Dad. Me too. He flipped off the switch between my shoulder blades, and I don't know how, but I fell asleep. End of chapter 22.